Life with siblings can be either incredibly enjoyable or utterly unbearable. Unfortunately for me, it was the latter. When I was born, my sister was already 6 years old. My parents had always dreamed of having two daughters, meticulously planning every aspect of our lives. From the moment they knew their first child was a girl, they wished fervently for another daughter. They predetermined everything: our names, our favorite colors, and even our futures were decided before we took our first breaths. When I entered the world, the immense pressure to follow in my sister's footsteps was overwhelming. You see, my sister was considered the golden child. She was blessed with good looks and athletic prowess, becoming everyone's favorite. Whether it was a new classmate or a neighbor, my sister made such a lasting impression that people often viewed her as the epitome of perfection. In contrast, there was me. While I wouldn't say I was entirely average compared to her, I was deemed below average in my parents' eyes. They wanted me to mirror her in every way, suppressing my individuality at a time when I was struggling to discover who I was. The expectation was to conform to a specific personality and style, and any deviation from this was deemed unacceptable. Growing up as the neglected child in my sister's shadow, I longed desperately for my parents' attention and praise. Even the slightest hint of positive feedback from them would make my day. Pathetic, I know, but it meant the world to me. To make matters worse, my sister became my tormentor. She was an expert bully, making my life even more challenging. The final straw came when I graduated high school as the valedictorian, and my parents didn't attend my graduation because my sister was hosting a party at our summer house with her friends. They offered countless excuses, claiming that a high school graduation wasn't significant. This was my breaking point. I realized I needed to escape to live freely. I chose to attend the college furthest from home, relishing my college life and studying my favorite subject, English, a choice my parents disapproved of. During this time, I learned to ignore their disapproval and live life on my own terms. In college, I met a guy and fell in love. He saw me for who I truly was, not for my family or my sister. Typically, people only got close to me to gather information about my sister, so my friendships often felt hollow. But in college, I finally found genuine connections. I truly began to understand the profound value of friendships, love, and the nuances of life when I graduated alongside my friends and boyfriend. Knowing my family would concoct yet another excuse to avoid attending, I didn't even bother calling them. After graduation, I secured a job and moved in with my boyfriend. Whenever my parents called, the conversation inevitably revolved around my sister. They never showed interest in my life, and I never mustered the energy to share any details about myself. Several years later, my boyfriend and I got engaged and planned to marry later that year. When I broke the news to my family, I was initially surprised by their interest in the wedding. However, their excitement quickly diminished when they discovered that my fiancé came from a regular middle-class family rather than a wealthy one. They had always envisioned me marrying into a high-status family, much like my sister did. I was left speechless by their suggestion, but chose to remain silent. My sister was the last to know about my wedding, and she made no effort to hide her disdain for me and my fiancé. Her condescension was a constant. She always spoke to me as though I were the dirt beneath her shoes. By this point, I had grown accustomed to her treatment and felt numb to her reactions. The wedding planning proceeded with the unwavering support of my friends and in-laws. My in-laws became the parents I had always longed for, treating me with genuine love and care. Their support often brought me to tears, and I found myself gravitating towards them whenever I needed parental guidance and affection. They understood my ongoing struggles with my own parents and sister, and constantly reassured me that they would always be there for me. Despite our efforts to keep the wedding simple and meaningful, my parents were never satisfied. My fiancé and I envisioned a small, intimate ceremony with close friends and family, designed to emphasize our love and bond. However, my parents insisted on a grand affair with extravagant decorations to accommodate a larger crowd. Frustrated by their last-minute suggestions, I asked them to respect our wishes and let the day be about us. It was evident that my sister was struggling to accept that my wedding day would be focused on me. She made sure to undermine my confidence every time we met. On the morning of my wedding day, my parents called to inform me that they wouldn't be attending. The reason? My sister was hosting a party for her 7-year-old child. They spoke as though it was perfectly reasonable to expect me to understand their priorities. I was heartbroken. I was getting married. For God's sake, realizing that I would never be important to them, I broke down in tears, pained by the harsh reality I had to accept. My in-laws rushed to my side, offering comfort and support while my fiancé was furious. He even suggested postponing the wedding. After taking a few moments to compose myself, I decided to proceed with the ceremony. The wedding hall was filled with the most important people in my life, and the absence of my parents spoke volumes about their place in my world. The wedding itself was a beautiful, intimate event, everything my husband and I had dreamed of. It went smoothly, and I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and joy, surrounded by those who truly cared for and supported us. In that moment, I knew I had created a new family, one built on love, understanding, and genuine connection, free from the shadow of my past. I noticed missed calls and texts from my parents updating me about the party my sister had hosted without a single congratulations for my marriage. That moment, I decided it was time to cut them out of my life. I called them, stated clearly that they were no longer part of my life, and hung up before they could respond, promptly blocking their contacts. Anger surged through me. Nearly a week later, they showed up at our apartment, demanding an explanation. I confronted them, expressing how they had never cared for me or acknowledged my achievements, always sidelining me in favor of my sister. Their response was the typical claim that everything they did was out of love. I scoffed. The truth was far less appealing, but I had come to terms with it. Just then, my in-laws arrived and were surprised to see my parents there. Noticing my discomfort, they asked if I wanted my parents to leave. When I nodded, they calmly asked my parents to leave. This struck a nerve, and my parents began accusing me of using my in-laws to make them jealous, proclaiming that my sister would never do something so hateful and was always grateful to them. They even insulted my husband and in-laws, which was the last straw for me. Before I knew it, I was screaming at them to get out. Shocked, they left. My in-laws hugged and comforted me the rest of the day. But it still hurt to realize my parents never truly loved me. Am I the one at fault for cutting them off? A few weeks later, I noticed an Instagram post from my sister. She was standing next to my bike with a caption that said she earned it. Tears welled up as I remembered buying that bike with my own hard-earned money after high school, since my parents refused to get me a graduation gift. The emotional attachment I had to that bike was indescribable. During my marriage planning, I had arranged for the bike to be moved to my new apartment, but it had been difficult to take it with me during my college years. So I left it at my parents' house. I even notified them that I would be taking it once I had settled a few more formalities. I called my sister to ask about the bike, and she casually replied that our parents had gifted it to her. Feeling utterly betrayed, I drove to my parents' house. They were surprised to see me, but their surprise faded when I brought up the issue of the bike. They argued that since I was married and had better in-laws, they didn't think I needed the bike anymore, so they gave it to my sister. She had always wanted that bike, not out of genuine interest, but simply because it was mine. Furious, I demanded they return it, but they refused. Left with no other option, I decided to file a case against them. My parents argued that I was ungrateful and indifferent, but I paid no attention. My husband and in-laws were shocked to learn about the bike being given to my sister, knowing how much it meant to me. My in-laws offered to speak with my parents on my behalf, but I knew my parents wouldn't treat them fairly. So, my husband and I went to the police to file the case. The police called in my parents and questioned them about the bike, even summoning my sister. Despite their attempts to argue, they insisted on taking the case further. It was shocking to see their determination to undermine me once again. I was prepared to stand my ground and accepted the challenge. Nearly 3 months have passed since the case concluded, and we won as expected. Throughout the ordeal, my parents and sister remained stubborn, refusing to relinquish what was rightfully mine. As a consequence for giving my bike to my sister without my consent, they were ordered to compensate me with additional money. Their reactions were priceless. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt a sense of liberation as I officially cut ties with my family for good. Today, I am genuinely happy with my husband and in-laws, and there is nothing I would change about my life. Your parents and sister never deserved you, and you are definitely not at fault here. They have caused you immense pain over the years. Yet you still extended an invitation to your wedding. It's entirely their fault for choosing not to attend and offering flimsy excuses. You did the right thing by cutting them off from your life. I am genuinely proud of you for staying strong all these years. It's incredibly challenging to feel ignored and undervalued by your own family. I am glad you have found parental love and support from your in-laws. Much love to you, your husband, and your in-laws. I am a 28-year-old male, happily married to my amazing husband, who is 27. In case it wasn't clear, we are in a gay relationship, which makes this whole situation even more baffling to me. Here's some background. I am a stay-at-home dad to our 4 and 2-year-old daughters. My husband works long hours, so I handle most of the housework and childcare. I love it and wouldn't trade it for the world. I always dreamed of having a family and being a stay-at-home dad. And my husband is wonderful about helping whenever he's home. It's an ideal arrangement for us. However, my family has never fully accepted it. They always think my husband is taking advantage of me or that I secretly resent my role. A month or two ago, he jokingly compared me to a 1950s housewife, and the nickname stuck. He occasionally calls me his housewife, mostly in private, and it's become a silly pet name between us. I find it cute and funny, and he would absolutely stop if I asked him to, so I see no issue with it. Yesterday, at a family gathering, he teasingly referred to me as his housewife. I didn't mind since my family knows it's an ongoing joke between us. However, my 20-year-old sister, who rarely shows up, lost her temper. She accused my husband of being homophobic and said it was offensive for him to feminize me. She even suggested that if he wanted a wife, he should get one instead of trying to turn me into one. We were both bewildered. My husband is 100% gay and has no interest in turning me into a woman. I am very comfortable in my identity as a man, and probably more traditionally masculine than my husband. Angry, I told her that her accusation was absurd and asked her to leave us alone if she was going to make such severe allegations. She started crying and left, making the situation awkward for everyone. So we left shortly after. My husband and I are still angry, and I don't feel like I did anything wrong. However, my sister keeps blowing up my phone, and my mom thinks I should apologize. I really don't want to. Am I the asshole? No, you are not the asshole. Not in any way. Your sister made an assumption and ended up making a fool of herself. One thing you might consider is letting her know that while you appreciate her attempt to advocate for you, speaking over you is both infantilizing and demeaning. Suggest she look into the phrase "nothing about us without us," which, though primarily about political action, applies to societal issues as well. I was ready to fight them and accepted the challenge head-on. It has been almost 3 months since the case ended, and we emerged victorious, as expected. My parents and sister remained adamant until the end, refusing to concede. As a punishment for giving my bike to my sister without my consent, they were ordered to compensate me with additional money. Their reactions were priceless. After officially severing ties with my family, I walked out of that situation for good. Now, I am content with my husband and my in-laws, and there is nothing I would change about my current life. Your parents and sister never deserved you, and you are definitely not at fault here. They have caused you immense pain over the years. Yet you still extended an invitation to your wedding. It's entirely their fault for choosing not to attend and offering flimsy excuses. You did the right thing by cutting them off from your life. I am genuinely proud of you for staying strong all these years. It's incredibly challenging to feel ignored and undervalued by your own family. I am glad you have found parental love and support from your in-laws. Much love to you, your husband, and your in-laws. I am a 28-year-old male, happily married to my amazing husband, who is 27. In case it wasn't clear, we are in a gay relationship, which makes this whole situation even more baffling to me. Here's some background. I am a stay-at-home dad to our 4 and 2-year-old daughters. My husband works long hours, so I handle most of the housework and childcare. I love it and wouldn't trade it for the world. I always dreamed of having a family and being a stay-at-home dad. And my husband is wonderful about helping whenever he's home. It's an ideal arrangement for us. However, my family has never fully accepted it. They always think my husband is taking advantage of me or that I secretly resent my role. A month or two ago, he jokingly compared me to a 1950s housewife, and the nickname stuck. He occasionally calls me his housewife, mostly in private, and it's become a silly pet name between us. I find it cute and funny, and he would absolutely stop if I asked him to, so I see no issue with it. Yesterday, at a family gathering, he teasingly referred to me as his housewife. I didn't mind since my family knows it's an ongoing joke between us. However, my 20-year-old sister, who rarely shows up, lost her temper. She accused my husband of being homophobic and said it was offensive for him to feminize me. She even suggested that if he wanted a wife, he should get one instead of trying to turn me into one. We were both bewildered. My husband is 100% gay and has no interest in turning me into a woman. I am very comfortable in my identity as a man, and probably more traditionally masculine than my husband. Angry, I told her that her accusation was absurd and asked her to leave us alone if she was going to make such severe allegations. She started crying and left, making the situation awkward for everyone. So we left shortly after. My husband and I are still angry, and I don't feel like I did anything wrong. However, my sister keeps blowing up my phone, and my mom thinks I should apologize. I really don't want to. Am I the asshole? No, you are not the asshole. Not in any way. Your sister made an assumption and ended up making a fool of herself. One thing you might consider is letting her know that while you appreciate her attempt to advocate for you, speaking over you is both infantilizing and demeaning. Suggest she look into the phrase "nothing about us without us," which, though primarily about political action, applies to societal issues as well. She cannot be an effective advocate for the LGBTQ plus community if she doesn't actually listen to the members of the community she is trying to support. You're not the asshole here. The housewife reference clearly triggered your sister, and it's possible she didn't articulate her feelings properly. While it's certainly not homophobic, it could come across as sexist given its historical connotations. Using a term that may be offensive to her, considering you are neither a wife nor a woman, might have struck a nerve. This is just a theory, and I could be wrong. It might make things easier to talk it out with her and keep the reference strictly between your husband and yourself when she's around, if she remains bothered by it. I'm a 29-year-old female and typically babysit my 4-year-old niece twice a week while my 26-year-old sister is at work. I watch her for just 2 hours between my sister leaving for work and her fiancé getting home. Last Saturday night, I went out with some friends. There were 7 of us, so we took 2 cars, 4 in my car and 3 in another. I was following the other car as we were heading to a friend's house in the country, which I had never been to before. Unfortunately, the worst happened. The other car was hit at 60 miles an hour and rolled over. It was a terrible accident. Only 2 people were injured. A kid from the other car, who was airlifted from the scene, and my closest friend, Stan, a 30-year-old male who was taken by ambulance to a major hospital. Stan's injuries were severe. He fractured his spine, broke a bone in his arm in 3 places, broke his wrist on the other hand, and suffered a concussion. Thankfully, he was released from the hospital on Tuesday, but he will need to return for multiple surgeries over the coming weeks. Although I don't think he should have been released so soon. His entire upper body is in a cast, and he requires full-time care. Since he doesn't have family or a significant other to help him, he is staying with my husband and me so we can care for him. Here's where I might be the asshole. When we were informed that Stan could go home as long as he had a caregiver, I let my sister know that I wouldn't be able to babysit my niece for a few weeks. I had kept her updated on everything, so she knew I would be his caregiver. Initially, she said it was fine and told me to focus on Stan and take care of myself as well. I'm 25 weeks pregnant. However, when it came down to actually needing a sitter for my niece, my sister couldn't find anyone else and insisted her daughter wouldn't be much trouble. I explained that I had too much on my plate, taking care of Stan, my dog, his 2 dogs, and my own 9-year-old child. Adding a 4-year-old to the mix was simply not feasible. My sister went ballistic. She told me that family comes first and that I should be more concerned about her daughter than Stan. This sparked a heated argument where I warned her that if she couldn't be reasonable, I would refuse to watch my niece ever again. My mom got involved and expressed that she understands it's a difficult situation, but emphasized that my sister also needs my help. I told her that I can't help everyone and that Stan is my primary concern at the moment. Now, both my mom and sister are refusing to speak to me because they believe I should be able to fit in babysitting my niece, arguing that Stan mostly lays around right now. I'm starting to feel like I might be in the wrong here, considering I would only be watching my niece for 2 hours a day, twice a week. Am I the asshole? NTA. Your friend was in a horrific accident and needs full-time care. Your sister needs to stop being so selfish and get things in perspective. Ultimately, taking care of her child is your sister's responsibility, not yours. If she can't find another sitter, that is her problem, not yours. You have already been extremely generous to your sister by babysitting for free, and she should be grateful for what you have done so far. Let's face it, it's not that she can't find childcare. It's that she can't find childcare she wants to pay for. There was no reason to bring your mother into this except to add another person to pressure you. The silent treatment is a form of emotional manipulation and abuse. If you give in to this, you can expect more of the same treatment in the future every time you try to stand up for yourself. Your mom saying your sister needs your help overlooks the fact that you have been helping her regularly and reliably up until now. The moment you need her to make alternative arrangements for a brief period, it suddenly becomes an obligation you can't refuse. Your sister has made it clear that she doesn't respect your needs, and your mom has shown that she prioritizes your sister's needs over yours. So, good news. Mom and sis can team up. Mom can watch your niece from now on, ensuring that your sister never has to worry about being mildly inconvenienced by someone else's severe life event again. Hooray! Your sister only cared as long as it was convenient for her. When it was no longer convenient, she stopped being sympathetic to what you were going through. Your mom siding with her shows that she, too, is prioritizing your sister's needs, even though they both know you're dealing with a lot. You are human and can only handle so much, and what you are doing for Stan is amazing and incredibly generous. Don't let them gaslight or guilt trip you into thinking you're the asshole, because you most certainly are not. Honestly, it might be time to go low contact or no contact with your sister and mom, either until they apologize or until you have less on your plate. Regardless, certainly don't babysit for your sister until she apologizes. Because right now, it seems like she just wants to use you for childcare and doesn't care about what you're going through.